Cheers, everyone. Go for it.
Yay.
Hey.
What are you drinking tonight, Julia?
Broadcasters are back. We got
What are you drinking tonight, Julia?
ice cold water, but in my Astros
so tasty.
tumbler. Hey, welcome back, everyone. Welcome back, Glimmer. Who here is in the best shape of their lives? Are we ready for
until
summer
I opened
camp?
this beer.
Best shape?
Yeah, it's spring training all over again.
I vote Sparky.
Of my life,
right?
no chance. No chance. But I'm lighter than I have been in probably 25 years.
Yeah, you are. Well, I only ask because that's like, the quote that starts to be tossed out whenever spring training starts. And we've already done that. But here we are again. Summer camp is upon us. We're calling it summer camp. Are we all cool with summer camp? This feels just like summer camp, right?
Do you know how many? Yeah, do you know how? Yeah, if they cook some s'mores out there, that'd be even better. But do you know how many parents are upset that they're not sending their kids to summer camp, but the Astros are going to summer camp?
That's right. Astros going to summer camp. It's happening.
There's still a lot of summer camps that are taking place though here in Texas, right?
There are. There are, but a lot of people are choosing not to partake for obvious reasons.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah.
By the way, strong shirt from Blummer tonight. I love
what does it say?
The snorting bull from the old scoreboard.
Oh, nice.
Perfect.
Well
played. Glad everyone has on sleeves this week, to be completely honest.
Yeah. That's a good thing.
You missed it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I wish I could say I tried it on, but I did not try on the tank top. I apologize.
Also, if you're looking for some home run calls, just, watch back last week's and listen to Sparky get after it.
That was some kind of special.
Lumber, did you hear that? Are you going to steal a couple of those? They're free.
I am not.
Not even ouchie Fauci.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep Fauci out of this.
Good call.
I'm Fauci free for right now regarding baseball.
Oh my goodness. Well, okay, so the Astros are going to summer camp, which just means we're one step closer. They've reported they of course have to go through lots of tests, but players arriving to Minute Maid Park. They're also going to U of H. First workout is happening. I mean, I just want to go around and see how everyone's feeling now that it is here and that it is happening. Blummer, since you weren't here last week, I'll make you go first.
I'm kind of curious to see how it goes. I thought that, 56 players that are on that list for the Astros are rather interesting. I think everybody wanted to see Forrest Whitley show up. And I think it's only going to benefit guys like that, especially Whitley, who really needs to kind of make that next step to get to that big league threshold and make an impact that we've all expected. So hopefully he's around, some of the veteran guys a little bit more, and he's around Strami a little bit more and realizes what it takes to become a major league pitcher. And Sparky's going to have to help me out because I'm terrible with pronunciations, but the young fireballer that throws about 100 miles an hour.
Navaldo.
Say it again.
Navaldo or Johanse.
I think Johanse. Doesn't he throw like 100 miles an hour and his strikeout rate was off the charts? I think that's
there's
a
two
great
or three
choice.
of those guys down there, but Johanse is the one that they're really excited about that can really blow people away. And you start thinking about in a really shortened season where somebody can go out there and maybe just get a little bit of confidence after his first outing. Man, there's no telling what a guy like that could do.
Yeah, and your smile kind of tells me that you do feel the same way because I've seen his numbers. Now we actually get a chance to see him, and I agree with you. If he gets a little ounce of confidence out there and gets the pitch a little bit, that'd be a lot of fun to watch. I think he could be an asset, somebody that nobody's seen and just come out and blow the doors off people.
Thing that I noticed with the guys going back to the Minute Maid Park was that the pitchers coming out of the dugout on the visiting side, they're using the visiting clubhouse, and the position players are in the other one. And of course they're separated from about half the squad who are over at U of H. So they're going to try to utilize as much as space as they can, especially while they can, and just try to get as far as they can with as many people healthy going into the season. I think that's really smart. Joe Espada, the Astros bench coach, is somebody they're going to lean upon quite a bit, and he's great at that.
It's going to be interesting too. You talk about health, and that's always what you think about when you think about getting through spring training or summer camp, as it were now. But it's like health takes on a completely different meaning now because you're talking about obviously you want guys to be in baseball shape, but then there's also concern, obviously, with the coronavirus and making sure guys are healthy there, and everybody's going to be tested fairly regularly. All the players and staff that are going to be there for summer camp. So I feel like, the fact that we're now at the point where guys are reporting and workouts are about to start, that feels like that's okay. That's one hurdle. It just feels like there's still a few more hurdles to get to a point where we're in the season, and then obviously try to get through 60 games. But every time there's another hurdle that's crossed, it's just that much more encouraging.
Okay, you have some thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think, 56 players, I guess the breakdown is 34 are going to be at Minute Maid and the other 22 at University of Houston. And then once the season starts, those guys who don't make the team will go over to Corpus Christi at Whataburger Field. So for me, it was interesting because now teams have always known whenever you've had a 40-man roster who they really cherish in their minor league system. But now you expand that to a 60-man player pool, and you find out a little bit more about who they really cherish in their organization. And now the trades are only allowed between teams if you use that 60-player pool. That had a lot to do with the strategy of who was on that list as well. So I think it's going to be really cool. I'm looking forward to the season starting and that first road trip, because you're allowed to have a taxi squad of 3 guys, and they're going to get major league per diem for that trip. And they're going to have to come back and go to Corpus Christi and be like, oh man, that was so cool to be a major leaguer for a road trip. But just one of the cool things about this season.
Oh, for sure. That's a really good point. Yeah. So they're starting at U of H. They're going to have their workouts there, but of course, school they're going to be using those facilities. So without a minor league season, Corpus Christi will be available, and the guys will move over there. I think it was July 25th. So all those guys will continue to work out there. But I'm curious to hear from Dusty and everyone after that, on that first day, and just to see how this is all going to go down. I just feel any question what is the configuration like? What is the blueprint of Minute Maid Park at U of H in order to have all this, everyone's safe and continuing to get their work done? There's just a lot of guys. We keep saying the number 56, but then you think about everyone else that is contributing to these guys getting themselves ready, staff, and how that's all going to go. Are there things that you guys are curious about when it comes to just working out and getting these workouts and bullpens thrown and things like that?
To me, the most important time of this whole situation might be the next 24 to 48 hours, just seeing how many guys actually return with positive tests. As long as that's a low number, then I think we can feel like we can exhale a little bit, wait for practices to start, see guys on the field, and that would make me feel a lot better. Until those tests come back, we really don't know where we stand with this. So that's a huge time for me, the next 24 hours or so.
I know Sparky's.
I think. Go ahead, Jeff. Go ahead, Jeff.
No, go ahead, Sparky. You're ready.
Well, I was just going to say, you got to think about these are 4.5, 5-hour days because they're spacing people out, and they're only having a few people work out at a time. But think about what that does to the training staff and the coaching staff who have to be out there for the entire time. And I would imagine that the training staff and the health professionals are pretty much going to be out there 7-8 hours a day minimum, just to get guys out there once they start having soreness creep in and getting treatment and things. Man, it's just going to keep mounting for the workload for Jeremiah Randall and his trainers and everybody involved, and how much probably meetings that they have to have after the work day and being able to communicate with all the coaches. Okay, who feels, what do we need to do with so-and-so? I mean, those guys have brutal days ahead.
I couldn't agree more. That was one of the first things I thought of, because we are coming back in a pandemic era, and it's a shortened season, and you're having an abbreviated, workout session to get guys ready. I can't imagine the amount of information that is flowing through that training room for those guys, being able to keep not just the players safe and healthy, the staff. We talked about how, this COVID affects some of the guys that are 65 and older, and there's 3 or 4 of them on the Astros coaching staff. And then, like Sparky's talking about, is keeping those guys healthy and trying to pace them. Because I would imagine, as a ball player, you hear 60 games and you're like, man, I'm just going to put my head down and barrel through this thing. But you got to be careful and make sure your body's ready to respond to all that. But Sparky, I wanted to ask you real quick. There's a ton of pitchers on that summer camp roster.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot of catchers, man. I
Right.
mean, if you're having a 3-week spring training and you talk about how much time you're on the field, some of those catchers are going to be catching, 7 or 8 guys a day.
Right. And they've got a couple of bullpen catchers, to catch guys' bullpens and such. I was curious. TK and I were talking about this beforehand as well, that Chucky Robinson was not on that roster because we saw him quite a bit during spring training. So it's questions that we'll have to ask Pete Putilla, their farm director, or maybe some of the people that involved at some point, how they came to pick some of those catchers. But we've known for a while now that as far as surplus in the minor leagues, that left-handed pitching and catching has been a weak area for them for the time that we've been broadcasters, maybe 6 or 7 years now.
And also too, when you think about right now and you look at that roster, outfield is something that's an area of not concern, but certainly something you have to think about with the Astros. Not so much for this year, but next year when you think about the fact that George Springer, Josh Reddick, Michael Brantley all will be free agents. There isn't a ton of outfield depth in the system, as you can kind of tell by looking at the 56 players that they're bringing to camp, and you can always bring more and add more guys to that roster. I think that's why the Astros have 4 open spots, so they can do that. So I'm curious to see some of these outfielders that are on that list and see how they perform and see if maybe there's somebody who can really emerge as an option this year and more importantly next year.
So as far as covering this, we're so used to seeing and so many reporters being there for spring training and getting the sound. It is going to be very different. Obviously, they are allowing a certain number of media to be in there. There's designated areas to shoot video, but the Astros are going to be doing a really great job. They're going to be sending out video that they're shooting. They're also going to have Dusty Baker available every day via Zoom. So this is stuff I've got Zoom down now, thank goodness, but we're going to be doing a lot of that because players are going to be talking to us that way. So just for fans that are trying to follow along, just know that we're all kind of figuring this out as we go. But that all starts Friday, first workout. Very excited.
When I thought about the way these workouts are going to be covered, because like you mentioned, media can't be on the field. They can watch from the press box at Minute Maid Park, but like we mentioned, a lot of guys are going to be working out at University of Houston. Those workouts are going to be closed to the media. So what's going to be interesting, and it kind of reminds me, I briefly got a chance, and I don't know if you, Julie, or TK have ever, covered much NFL, but I briefly got a chance when I was in Kansas City to cover some Kansas City Chiefs midweek stuff, and they allow you access to practice, but it's for 30 minutes, and you never know what you're going to see, and it's usually nothing by design because they know when the media is going to be there, so that's not when they're going to do anything that they think might be, potentially sensitive or potentially advantageous for the opponent to know. It's going to be it's going to be. I didn't walk right into that, but it's going to be like that in just the sense that you're going to get to see guys of your media in the press box working out at Minute Maid Park, but it's only going to be a fraction of guys. You don't necessarily know who's going to be there, what they're going to be doing. It's going to be really weird as opposed to if you think about covering spring training, especially before games start, and you have stuff going on in the backfield, and you kind of wander and see what's going on over here, see what's going on over there. It's going to be completely different from a media coverage perspective in that regard.
Oh, well, okay. Well, I was excited until you dropped that on us.
I mean, I'm so excited. The guys are working out.
I am too. No, it is. It's just the
I'm
stuff
bummed
that
for you,
I'm gonna
Julia.
miss. Yeah, and I'm gonna miss the interaction and getting. That's where the good stuff comes. It usually starts in conversation,
right,
and then it turns into an interview or a story, and then just the hanging out with the manager. The time you spend sitting around with a Dusty Baker and during his media availability, the things that he can say and share before and after, are usually the best things, and they're the things that turn into stories for us that we share over the broadcast. So I'm definitely going to miss that, and I'm hoping we can find a way to still bring that to the fans. We're obviously going to try our best and be as creative as we can, but you're right. All of that's going to be very different.
That's the thing
to me. Go ahead, Sparky.
Well, I was just going to say, we've all thought about it. The thing that probably separates us from the casual fan, maybe being around the game a lot or maybe playing or doing whatever. But it's the access that we have to the players and the stories and things like that we can share. So without that, now I'm sure you guys have thought about this. I'm trying to think of ways that we can be creative and still give people things that they can't just read. You know, they can't just
Right.
go to the Chronicle or MLB.com and find out the same things that the beat writers are reporting, or the same things that we're saying during the course of the broadcast isn't going to be very satisfying probably for the viewer. So we're going to have to come up with some stuff.
Yeah, that's to me the big thing. I mean, we're looked at as part of the team, and so we get some information that other members of the media don't get. So without that access that we normally have, especially when you go on the road, but Julia does such a great job of developing those relationships throughout the course of the year. That's why she has that Emmy over her left shoulder, because she's so good at telling stories. And
Is that what that
and
is?
that's an Emmy, baby.
Wow.
So
well
anyway,
played.
I'm going to miss that a lot. I know Julia especially. That's such a big
Yeah.
part of what you do.
Are you going to name your baby Emma?
From the Emmy. Oh, Sparky.
Are you going to name it EGOT because you're trying to get, you know, the Grammy, the Oscar, and the Tony, right?
That's
Do
what we're going for.
the four piece.
That's goals for baby
The Grand
right now.
Slam.
Okay, so before we move on to talk a little bit about some of the things that are going to change about the season, can we take a second to talk about the minor league baseball season being canceled? Just, you know, it was news that we all knew was coming, felt was coming. Obviously, wasn't official until it absolutely was. But just it's just a heartbreaking day. I mean, I don't know another way to put that for all the organizations that are affected by this. And, you know, obviously we've heard some of these players are being taken care of or have stipends, but we're not just talking about the players here. And you guys know this just as well as I do, all the people that go into it, the broadcasters, the front office, and the fans there as well. Just you got, you know, what are your thoughts on that? And, you know, how much are you guys hurting over the fact that there won't be a minor league baseball season?
Yeah, obviously knew it was, like you said, this was inevitable that they were going to wind up canceling the minor league season since they get so much of their revenue from fans actually being at the ballpark, and that's not as much of a possibility anymore. But I mean, I spent 7 years as a minor league broadcaster. I still have a lot of good friends that work in the minor league, still are friends with people that I met during my time in the minor leagues in 3 different places. And yeah, it's really sad. It's heartbreaking. I know how much those teams mean to those communities and what a big deal it is to have professional baseball in the summer in some of these places, and a lot of these places that are, you know, several hours from the nearest major league team. And, you know, the minor leagues, it's where it's at for them. Those guys are heroes. And I know Blummer and Sparky know that from playing in the minor leagues. I mean, in a lot of these towns, you might as well be big leaguers. That's how you're looked at. That's how the fans see you, because that's the closest access that they have to you know, professional baseball and high level baseball. And it's disappointing that it's not going to happen this year. And then you throw in that, you know, there's a chance that several teams are going to be contracted and aren't going to be around next year. So they didn't really get a chance, whichever teams those are, didn't really get a chance to really have a proper send off.
I think about how emotional it is for probably a lot of people, and how many times, and I know all of you guys have spent times, you know, down in the minor leagues, and I think it's a lonely time as a player and maybe even as a coach. You wonder if the people in the major league level notice you and things like that, but the fans do, and that makes you feel really good. So there's a connection there between the fans and the players because of that, and it's much stronger than maybe it is even at the major league level, because you get better access. You know, you're closer to them, and there's host families, and you just get to know each other, and you forge these really deep relationships. And I've seen a lot of tears at the end of seasons of people back like in Beloit, Wisconsin, or Stockton, California, when the team goes for the winter. You know, it means a lot to them, you know, for those 5 or 6 months during the year. It brings a lot of joy to a lot of families. So I feel really bad for those communities. I hope they can pick it up.
Yeah, you feel awful for the communities. You feel awful for all the minor league players. I really feel for the guys who were just drafted that were high school seniors, because They didn't get a high school senior year. They didn't get any of those pomp and circumstance, no graduation, no senior year where you're the stud, you're the big man on campus for your baseball team. And now they're probably, unless there's some sort of fall league where they can start to get some reps in, they're probably going to have to go a whole nother year. And maybe, I mean, Sparky and Blummer can either talk about this. Think about if these guys go from their junior year in high school until the year after they are drafted without playing any organized baseball. I mean, that's now a span of almost 2 years, and that's your developmental stage. That's like your 17, 18-year-old. That's when you're changing, your body's changing, you're growing, and I can't imagine what those kids are going through.
Yeah, there's so many different scenarios where it affects so many different people, but having been a player and gone through the minor leagues, those were some of the best stories and some of the best friendships that you created, and some of the stories that I still draw from when I'm working on the broadcast, because they've embedded themselves in who the character of these players are as they get to the big leagues. I know it's changed a little bit where guys are getting rushed to the big leagues, but for Sparky and I, we spent, Sparky, you spent 9 years. I spent 4.5 years. I didn't break in until I was 26 years old. So like TK said, I became a grown man riding a bus around the minor leagues and really getting to see parts of the country that I never would have seen if it wasn't for baseball. And then you start to read some of the articles where you start to hear about the communities and about the people who work within the business. And now I'm really recognizing it now that I'm on the outside working in the industry of baseball and watching it. I have a better understanding of how it affects the community. I mean, for 6 months out of the year, 5 months out of the year, some of these small towns really thrive on having a minor league team in there. And it creates revenue, it creates jobs, it creates opportunity, and it also creates great feelings and emotions throughout the community. And that's what's going to be lost.
I think back to what the general manager for the Kansas City Royals, Dayton Moore, said when they were talking about, paying some of their minor leaguers. But he said, these are the lifeblood of even the major league teams. Even if they never make it to the major leagues, these are the guys, once they're released, go back into the communities and give baseball lessons. They coach little league teams. They coach junior colleges. They coach colleges. So when you really think about it, it's a lot of these minor leaguers who go back to these towns who make Major League Baseball what it is because of what they bring back to their hometowns.
Great call.
Well said. Yep. Well said. We'll see everyone in 2021. Everyone just hang in there. We're thinking about everyone that's been affected by that for sure. So when it comes to the Major League Baseball season, it's going to be different for how many different reasons, but the unique features, I said this earlier. No, so Major League Baseball put out a press release recently, and they were just, throwing bullet points out there for fans, tune in because you're going to want to see this. There are going to be some changes to the game. This is a 60-game season. But, a big one that we didn't touch on really last week, I don't think, the DH for the National League. It's happening. We'll see where we all go from here when it comes to that. But it's changing this year, starting 2020. So let's go around and you guys tell me what you think. Starting with TK.
I think Lance McCullers might end up being the last pitcher to ever have an RBI in the World Series. So that's
right.
Kind of some feather in his cap. I've been a National League guy growing up, and now I've been in the American League for over 20 consecutive seasons. I still like the game without the DH, but I know I'm kind of in the minority now. Most baseball fans like the DH. So it was eventually going to go that way, and I guess this year's just expedited the process. So I'm good with it because it makes a lot of sense. You don't want to see pitchers get hurt, especially in a shortened season. And I think it's eventually going to lead to the universal DH for future years.
Yeah, I'm kind of with TK in that regard with the DH. And I think a lot of it, like how you feel about it, depends on what baseball you grew up watching. And I grew up watching mostly the Mets, National League. So, growing up, I was definitely a fan of no DH. I have, like TK, grown to appreciate the DH, working in baseball and being in the American League for the last 7 years with the Astros, and then 4 years before that covering the Royals. So I definitely have an appreciation for it. And we were always going to get to a point. I think everyone in the game kind of knew it was inevitable that there'd be a universal DH. So I guess this is kind of the first step toward that. I think, though, whenever you talk about getting rid of something in the game, I mean, that's pretty serious. I always did kind of like the fact that pitchers hitting was still around, even if it wasn't throughout all of baseball, that you kind of had you know, the uniqueness of that, and it didn't completely go away, but I certainly understand why it is, and I get it. And, you know, you talk about the unique features of this season. I feel like 2020 already has had a lot of unique features. So, I mean, let's add a few more. Let's add a few more.
2020 features suck. God.
You know, I'm playing.
Sparky, what was your career batting average?
Uniform. My batting average?
Yeah, what was your career batting average?
It was probably $130. I don't even know, but it was bad. It's amazing how bad your skills deteriorate. Spending 10 years in the minor league. You know, in junior college, I was a hitter, you know, and I fancied myself for a pitcher anyway to be a pretty good athlete. But, you know, as you get older, your hands get slower, the ball speeds up and all that. I'm glad it's uniform now because I think rosters, you know, going into the other team's ballpark, a lot of times aren't really well suited for the other team's home ballpark. So I think it being uniform, I'm kind of in favor of, just because I don't think it gives anybody an advantage in interleague play.
I don't think I've ever asked you
this. 5 for 41, by the way, for Steve Sparks.
What's that?
There you go.
5 for 41.
Robert.
17 strikeouts in 44 plate appearances. That's pretty good for a pitcher. Seriously. Less than half?
He had a double.
I was drunk.
One double. You put the ball in play. That's all you can ask.
Sparky, did you ever hit against another knuckleballer? I've never asked you that.
No, I never did.
That's a great question too, man.
That is a great question. Yeah, I never faced anybody.
Oh.
That would have matched my bat speed much better. That was always my little dig, like when backup catchers for some reason just owned me. And my little dig, my dig, it was just constant, just because I would always be pissed off about Tony Pena or Ron Carcavise taking me deep.
Ron Carcavise.
His bat speed matches up with my velocity pretty well.
Dude, that is outstanding. Man, you know what? I am on the fence on this one. I think I'm leaning a little bit more towards the DH. And like Robert said, it's because of how I grew up in the game. I wouldn't be sitting here right now if it wasn't for pitchers hitting. If pitchers were good hitters, I wouldn't have had a job for as long as I did.
Right.
I spent 13 of 14 years in the National League because I came in and switch hit. I came in on pinch hits. I came in on double switches and things like that. So it allowed me the opportunity to get into the game more often and actually create a job.
Yeah, I get that.
So I have an appreciation for that. But at the same time, now is calling American League games and getting used to the DH and remembering the times when I was playing where the pitcher would come up to the plate with 2 outs. I'd immediately put my glove on and get to the top step and get ready to take the field. You know, I don't miss that. So I think, you know, Sparky brings up an even better point. Just making it universal and evening the playing field is a great idea, because the interleague during the season gets a little wonky when you have to take your American League pitchers into the National League where they haven't hit for a while and make them bunt, and they look kind of ridiculous. But at the same time, as a player in the union, you just opened up 15 more jobs that could be pretty well paying.
Yeah, high paying.
Well, that there's several features, but that being a big one, I don't think we got enough time to discuss it last time. But there's the extra innings rule. Going to begin with the extra innings. Going to begin with a runner on second base. There's the 3-batter minimum that we were talking about because we knew about that one. Also, unsportsmanlike conduct is prohibited, but going to be strictly enforced to avoid all this physical contact and the 6 feet rule. So no fighting in the broadcast booths for you guys either. Everyone get along.
You know what makes that rule kind of interesting, and I hate to interject, not just because I want to knock Sparky out sometimes.
Yeah, I get it.
And he feels the same way about me. It's okay. It's a mutual love-hate relationship. Is the fact that the Dodgers will be playing the Astros in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sensing a little Correa-Bellinger matchup, maybe. I don't know. Stirring the pot.
It'll be fun. You know, that talking about creativity and finding stories, that series won't lack for stories. That'll be fun.
That's for sure. Okay, so last question. We'll wrap it up with this. Is this ball club built for the sprint versus the marathon, or is there even a way to tell? Is this kind of evening the playoff or the playing field for all teams? What do y'all think?
I think it evens the playing field. I think the longer the season you have, the the better teams usually rise to the top. So yeah, in a 60-game season, you're 102 games in normally at that point. You've separated yourself. You found out it's easy to hide. It's easier to hide flaws in your team over 60 games than over 162. So I don't think it helps the better teams, but I also think the Astros are fine. They're probably still going to make the playoffs, but you're not going to have a 10 or 15 game lead at any point. It's going to be tight right down into the final week, obviously.
Yeah,
I think
pull away. Nobody's going to pull away, are they?
Yeah, it doesn't seem that
if the
way.
Mariners get off to that start that they had last year, they may make a run for it.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, they started 13-2 last year, Seattle.
Hey, the Nationals were below 500 after 2 months.
Yep.
That's the other thing too. Is you're not able to make up that time that you usually have in a regular season. Because I'm with TK. Anybody can win in a sprint. I think the Astros now with this 3-month, 4-month layoff, you've got JV's healthy. Lance McCullers got 3 extra more months to get healthy, and Jordan should be ready to go. I think they match up great, but it's going to be tighter than a lot of people think.
And I said this, I did a radio interview the other day, and I brought this up. There's going to be one of the teams that's a contender that's going to get off to a slow start. And a slow start in a 60-game season could be 3-10. So then what do? Do you panic? Do you sit back and say there's still going to be enough time? I mean, the trade deadline is August 31st. It's going to be like a little more than a month into the season. So it's going to be really interesting. But there's going to be one team that expects to be a contender that's going to get off to a slow start over their first 15, 20 games. And it's going to get really interesting. Certainly hope it's not the Astros, obviously. But it's going to get really interesting in terms of, what does that team do? That may be worth watching.
I think
we know there's not gonna...
plays in. Experience plays in. When you get off to a bad start, is to eliminate panic. And usually the experienced players know how to right the ship.
And we know at the beginning of the season, at least, and maybe continuing through the first month or two, or possibly all season, there's not going to be fans. But have you guys seen some teams are having people for a certain fee be able to have their cardboard cutouts in the stands? That'll be pretty cool.
Yeah, so Oakland's doing that. Somebody else?
Hey, all I've got to say is, hey, let's get a pool together and get all of us in Astro gear in every other stadium that we show on TV. And then my question to Robert is, you're talking about Oakland. Is somebody going to pay enough money to get that drum set or a speaker in there to get the boom, 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 boom going?
Well, there's going to be, a lot of these places are going to pump in crowd noise. If you're pumping in crowd noise in Oakland, I mean, you gotta pump in the drums if you're going to make it authentic. You got to pump in some drums, and you got to pump in some MC Hammer music in Oakland.
Yeah,
otherwise, it's not authentic.
Oh no, the seagulls! They're not going to have anything to eat.
How are we going to replicate that in a studio?
Oh my God!
Speaking of Oakland, they're taking it to the next level with their cardboard cutouts, and I think other teams are considering doing this too. So in Oakland, if you pay the higher end on the cardboard cutouts and your cutout is hit by a foul ball, they're going to send you that ball like you caught it in real life. How cool is that?
Awesome.
That's a good moneymaker. That was smart.
Love it.
Yep.
We're all getting creative here. All right, guys. Y'all have a good week. Cheers again.
You too. Happy 4th of July.
Yeah.
Happy
4th of July, everybody.
4th.